Welcome, everybody, to the Wednesday morning series. Troy Love is here, and the focus on today's webinar in this series is attachment wounds. His book, Finding Peace, is super helpful for identifying the wounds and working through them. He also does a work group on the Seeking Integrity website. It's a 6-week course. We're going to schedule another one for the future because he's in the middle of one right now. And then he does a Friday morning group, drop-in group for men, and alternating Thursdays he's on sexandrelationshiphealing.com with betrayed partners. So really looking at what attachment wounds are and how we can identify them and not get so activated by them. So I've shared before on this that, just understanding, like I have apparently massive abandonment wounds that I didn't know about. Well, I knew about, but I didn't have a label for. So they kept coming up, but I didn't know what they were. And just being able to identify what it was and go, oh, that's what that is. And then being able to make a choice was a huge gift for me personally. So I really value the work. So this is your opportunity to ask Troy questions. So at the bottom of the screen, you'll see Q&A, and we would invite you to put your questions in there. And it doesn't have to just be about attachment wounds. He works within this field. So if you are someone who is struggling with addiction, if you are newly in recovery, if you have been in the process for a while and going, hey, I really need to lean into this, if you're a betrayed partner, please ask questions, and Troy will be happy to answer those for you. So we don't have questions yet, so go for it. Yeah.
All right. So welcome, everyone. I had a question. Somebody was listening to my podcast the other day, and I mentioned the attachment wounds all the time. And somebody said, you mentioned those, but what are they?
Good question.
And so as we're waiting for some questions, maybe it would be helpful to just revisit those very quickly. We're wired for connection as humans. We're wired physiologically, neurologically, spiritually, sexually, emotionally, quite physically. As like babies, we were wired to our mothers. And so we're wired to be connected to each other. We don't survive very well without that connection. And then when things happen to us in our life that damage or break those connections, depending on the severity or the frequency, it can create wounds for us. And oftentimes these wounds will happen when we're children, but they can happen when we're an adult as well. And they don't heal because oftentimes we don't even know that they're there. And then it's just like a sunburn that gets hit. And then there's a reaction and we pull away, or we become angry, or we become angsty, and we don't really know why. So the 6 attachment wounds are loss, rejection, neglect, abandonment, betrayal, and abuse. And each one of them has some nuances that are a little bit different than the others. Some of them overlap a little bit, but basically it's something happened. Either I lost you, a person died, or they moved away, or they were really mean to me, or they abused me, or they disappeared from my life, or they just didn't pay attention to me, that caused a wound that now affects the way that I interact with everybody else. And there's a fear, like, are you going to do that to me too, almost? And sometimes an anxiety, like a clinging, as like, I become super anxiously attached to you, or I become avoidantly attached. Like I pull away as a way of coping, but all of it is connected to those wounds. So maybe that would be helpful as people are maybe brand new today.
Somebody said, could you please repeat them? So could you list them again?
Sure. So loss, neglect, rejection, abandonment, betrayal, and abuse. So hopefully that's helpful.
Loss, for neglect, rejection, abandonment, abuse. I missed one. I'm typing.
Yeah, loss, neglect, rejection, abandonment, betrayal, And
betrayal. Okay, I just put it in the chat for everybody too, in case you want to.
perfect. Thank you.
And you often talk about like the voices that are attached with that. So can you elaborate on that a bit too?
Yeah. So part of what happens, Brene Brown and others have done a lot of work around shame. John Bradshaw in the 80s did a lot of work around shame. Shame is a very prevalent part, especially in addiction, but it's a prevalent part of pretty much everything. It's a big old nebulous, heavy thing that is very much tied to these attachment wounds, because what happens is that when these wounds are created, we oftentimes begin to believe that they were created because I'm flawed and defective, or there's something wrong with me. Most of the time. Sometimes we don't buy into that, but most of the time we do, which is part of the ingredients that we put into creating shame. Is I'm flawed and defective, and therefore I am unworthy of love and belonging. So there are lots of different ways that therapists and others have learned how to develop shame resilience. Part of what I've learned how to do is I've been taught how to create like these avatars or these personifications of shame. So there's 6 characters or avatars, archetypes, whatever you want to use, of shame, each one of them playing a different role. And what that does for me is it helps me be able to identify and maybe even narrow down a little bit what part of shame is talking to me. And then I can handle that a little bit better because I can actually have a conversation with that part. It's similar, if you're familiar with internal family systems, there's some parallels to that type of modality of therapy. It's not, there's a lot of overlap, to be honest, but it's not the same. But those 6 shadows are the judge, which is the voice that most people recognize the loudest when I talk about it. It's that internal critic, the inner critic, the voice that just beats the crap out of you and tells you how awful you are and you can't do anything right. On the opposite side of the judge is the royal, which tells you that you're better than everybody else, that you're entitled, that you deserve, that you need to be treated better than everybody else. Then there's the impotent, we'll start with that. So they said that. Then there's the impotent one. And the impotent one is the voice that tells you that you can't, that you're never gonna make it. And I don't know why you even bother. The archetype that fits the best is L.L. Milne's character Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. Like, nothing you do is ever gonna get any better. I don't even know why you. That's the impotent one, boys. And on the flip side of the impotent one is the rebel, who says you can do whatever you want, whenever you want. Doesn't matter who you hurt, what rules you break, doesn't matter. And it's almost like it comes from a place of anger, like, F you, I'm gonna do whatever I want to do. And oftentimes that combined with the royal are what gets an addict into trouble, because the royal will tell them, well, you deserve to be treated better and you don't deserve this, like you. And then the rebel says, yeah, so let's like go act out, or let's go do whatever. So those two can be pretty insidious in the acting out side of things, but they don't show up. Well, a lot of people have a hard time connecting with those two until I point out when you're acting out, and then like, oh, there they are. And then the last 2 are the politician. And the politician is the voice that wants you to like put on a mask and pretend that everything's okay. Like, put on a smile and go out and shake hands and kiss the babies and get everybody to like you. You want everybody to like you. So don't let anybody know that you have problems in your life. Don't let anybody know that you struggle. You just got to pretend that everything's okay. Just put on that mask. It's okay. Because if they find out, this is what the politician says, if they find out, they're going to not like you. And the flip side of that is the martyr who says, well, we actually do want people to know how much you sacrifice yourself for everybody else, so they can feel sorry for you, so they can pity you. So we're not going to tell them what our problems are really, only unless it's going to help them like pity us and feel like not compassion really. We just want people to feel sorry for us. That's what the martyr does. Out of all the 6, that's probably the least understood and the most complicated of the shadows, but it can play a role. But those 6 will often show up, sometimes more than one, when we are hurting, when one of our wounds has shown up. And they show up because they are actually trying to protect us from the wounds getting worse. But if we let them run our life, they make everything more complicated and even more dark, because what shame does is it unravels connection. And what we need when our attachment wounds are being hit is connection. So shame will make it almost impossible to get the connection that we need. And it's like this crazy thing because it's convincing us that we're helping, but it's not. So those 2 like are some pretty powerful concepts, and we've talked a lot about it in other videos. And if you're an addict and want to learn more about that, in the class that we do at Seeking Integrity, that's something that we can do. And you also can read about them in the Finding Peace workbook that's available on Amazon.
And, I think it's so helpful, like I said, just to be able to identify what the wound is, or the judge, like, absolutely. The judge is the quickest one to pop out for me of, like, and I even know where the language came from, in the familiar, or familial, because it was somebody in my family's voice, and, you are such an idiot, like, I mean, all of those type of things. And, and I have to go, no, that wasn't my, the finest and best, moment, but that doesn't make me an idiot. I mean, but being able to unwind that and go, yeah, no, that's not true, and look at it really, is super helpful. It's, it takes practice, and it's not like, the judge doesn't pop up for me, from time to time, but at least having the ability to go, wait, and not just taking all of that on is really helpful. So we have a really good question. I tend to keep my feelings of hurt and anger bottled up because when I try to express them to my husband, he starts saying things like, you'd be better off without me. You wouldn't have these feelings if you didn't have to deal with me, etc. This triggers my abandonment rejection wounds, and so I either backpedal and approach him softer or hold sadness and hurt. What do you suggest I do to overcome these wounds?
That is a beautiful question. So when I'm hearing that, what I'm hearing immediately is that your husband is going into shame himself.
Mhm.
Like, so you're trying to express your pain and your hurt, and the opposite of shame is empathy, right? So the more shame that we've been hijacked by, the less capacity we have to be able to have empathy for other people. We can't put ourselves in other people's shoes. And when we're dealing with addiction, oftentimes the empathy tank is really teeny, and the shame tank is like overflowing. And so what is happening is that as you're trying to share your hurt, which I'm super proud of you for doing, you're trying to be honest, and he can't hold space for that. And he immediately goes into shame, and his martyr is showing up. And his martyr has actually hijacked him, and now his martyr is talking to you. It's not your husband that's talking to you, it's his martyr that's talking to you and saying kind of manipulative things. That's what the martyr does. It's manipulative things like, oh my gosh, you'd be better off without me. And again, what I said a minute ago, the martyr's goal is to get people to feel sorry for that person, right? So the martyr is trying to get you to feel sorry for your husband. Why? So to take the pressure off of the pain and the guilt that he's feeling, and to take attention away from your pain that you're feeling. We're gonna like subvert it. We're going to move it away so we don't have to deal with actually the pain, which obviously is not helping, right? And so part of that is he's not going to like that, but part of that is saying, so I can tell that you're in a lot of shame right now. I can tell that you're feeling a lot of shame, and that's not helping. And the challenge is that when you start to have conversations with the shadows, you won't win, by the way. Even if you're trying to have them by yourself, you won't win. They are really, really good. They've been doing this for years and years. They're really good at coming up with all kinds of things that don't make no sense. But so you won't be able to do that. But you can recognize, hey, you're having a shame experience, and that's not working for me. So do you need to take a few minutes to like go figure that out and come back and respond in a little bit differently? Because this is this is actually what I would need right now, is for you not to go into shame and make it all about you, but to actually hear that I'm hurting, and have you hold space and hear that like my rejection wound is really hurt right now. And what I need is for you to say something like, and it's almost like you have to coach him. But seriously, that's okay. Like, you have to coach them sometimes. What I need you to say is, honey, that sounds so incredibly hard for you. I am so sorry. What can I do to show up for you? Write that down, piece of paper, honey. Okay, now try it. Honey, that sounds incredibly hard for you. What can I do? Now, I know you're going to say, well, that doesn't have the same effect, but I'm not, if you saw your husband like actually holding this piece of paper and saying, okay, I'm going to try it, I would imagine that there would be something that would shift in both of you, because he's not doing the same pattern he normally does. And you can see that he's actually trying to do something different. And so it's not perfect, but he's learning. Empathy is a skill. It's just like learning how to play the piano or throw a ball or whatever other skill is out there, doing open heart surgery. It's a skill that you have to learn. And most people, especially men in this planet, have not been taught how to do empathy very well. So they don't know how to do it. So we teach them a little bit. So, honey, you're going to shame. That's not really helpful. Here's what I need. Do you think you could do that for me? And you kind of, and you have to hold space for yourself and remember that you are worthy of love and belonging. Hard to do. That's why we encourage you to go to some support groups and get some support from other women who know exactly what you're feeling like right now. As you do that, you are then tending to your abandonment and your rejection wound, because you are showing up for you. You're not just saying, oh my gosh, like this pattern again, and letting any of the shadows that might show up, like the impotent one maybe show up like, oh my gosh, I don't even know why you bothered being vulnerable, because he's never going to show up. He's never going to get this right. You're never going to get your needs met. And then like that becomes overwhelming. So hopefully that was helpful. But just to be able to like recognize that's the pattern and call it out, like in a compassionate way. Hey, honey, I'll tell you, when I was in couples therapy a long time ago, and I was doing that whole thing, the therapist like, Troy, that is not sexy. That is not erotic. That is not a turn on. That does not make your wife feel any closer to you when you do that. That was like a light bulb moment for me. I should be absolutely clear about that, right? Like, duh. But in the moment, my thought was, if I can just like grovel in the dirt and tell you how awful of a human being I was, you could then sense how sorry I was, and then you would maybe feel better. That does not work because it's shame-based. It's not guilt-based. It's not, you know what, I made a mistake and I'm so sorry. What can I do to make it better? It's like, nope, you're right. I'm a horrible human being and I just should never be born, and you'd just be better off without me. Nope, that's shame-based. So that was really helpful to hear that. And it changed the way that I responded. It's just like, I want to show up. I want to be somebody who's seen as beautiful and attractive to my wife. And shame is not attractive.
Well, and I think, and maybe not in the moment when, but to have the conversation of, this is the pattern that we've experienced and I want to try something different. Are you willing to try something different? Yeah. Okay. Because otherwise, yeah, it's that repetition of the same pattern. And first thing I read when I was reading this is like, oh, it's all about him. It's all about him. And the huge deflection, like Troy was talking about, it's like, because you soften the message or you go away. And then he doesn't have to deal with those uncomfortable, unpleasant feelings that no addict has any skill at dealing with. That's why we acted out, because we didn't have the manual on how to do this stuff. And so yeah, I mean, the awkward reading the page, yup. And it feels, and I get it, partners are going like, well, it doesn't feel real. No, it isn't, because he's at, like Troy talked about, the tank is like, maybe there's a tank, so, but it's empty. But to learn, and we can, but we have to be willing to step into the uncomfortable space and not just, keep deflecting. So I'm so glad you're asking the question. As with all of this, it isn't you, it's him. But yeah, if you can have him watch this video, maybe that'll be helpful for getting some pointers too. Okay, somebody put one in the chat. So if you have questions, if you could put them in the Q&A, that's super helpful for me. But this one says, my husband lists all the things he does for me when we argue about sex. He wants it and says he always comes to me first, and I don't bring up my pain until he asks for sex. I want off the merry-go-round of 40 plus years, but he says I have underlying issues that I must be addressed. How do I help him understand that the porn is the main issue we need to address? Wow, that's a big, don't look over here, look over here. It's you. That's what I'm reading. So.
Well, you do have underlying issues that need to be addressed, and you're trying to address them.
Mm-hmm.
So does he. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to address them, and he's not hearing it. But one of the things that we do as humans, not just addicts, I think we do as humans, is we're really good at pointing out the faults and flaws of other people, not realizing that that's actually a mirror, and that the things that we are most frustrated about in somebody else are the things that we also need to be working on ourselves. It's interesting to me, like he sees it almost like as a transactional, like, here's the list of all the things that I do for you, and therefore I'm reading into this, he may not be saying this, but and therefore you need to give me sex. That's not how sex works. This is not an exchange theory. Like, we're not passing favors back and forth, especially in order for sex to be the kind of intimacy and beautiful connected experience. That definitely is not how it needs to be seen. It's a being vulnerable and real. And what I'm hearing from you is you don't feel safe. Yeah, I'm sure he's doing some really nice things for you around the house. You do a lot of really nice things for him around the house too. You could make a list of all the wonderful things you do for him too, right? Like, we could go down that path of all the things we do for each other. That's not the issue. And your question is, how do I help him understand that porn is the main issue? There's a video created by Fight the New Drug. It's a free documentary. It's called Brain Heart World. It's like an hour and a half. If you just Google Brain Heart World, Fight the New Drug, you can. It was made for teenagers, but I have adults watch it all the time. And it's in 3 sections. So the first part is talking about what porn does to the brain. The second is what porn does to relationships. And how it really unravels relationships. And then the third talks about what porn does to affect the world as far as like sex trafficking, and how a lot of the people who are in porn videos are victims of sex trafficking. I can't tell you how many people have watched that video and their hearts have been changed and their eyes have been opened, and they're like, I don't want to ever be a part of or contribute to that again. It's a non-invasive thing, you could say, hey, honey, would you watch this? It was recommended that we watch this together. I was thinking about maybe showing this, recommending this to our kids so they could show it to our grandkids. What do you think? So let me see if I can find the link and I'll put it in there for you. But that is a way, so it's not coming directly from you, but it is a way of being able to share with him that, like, look, this is part of the reason why I'm having the issues that I'm having, because there's no safety, honey. I don't feel safe. So here's the link, and it's free. You can watch it for free.
Can you put it to everyone? You put it just,
Oh, sorry.
yeah, no, it's okay. But you've got the link already copied. So if you put it to everyone, then everyone gets it. So yeah. So yeah. And we have a porn addiction 101 work group, and we get a foundational, they have a foundational plan for stopping. So understanding that it's a problem, and then how to stop it. But yeah, I was thinking, it's like, when a guy buys a woman dinner and then expects to have sex because I paid for dinner. I mean, that was almost like the transactional. It's like, oh, I deserve this. And no, it really is about creating safety. And I think I hear this often that, I want to be intimate with my person. And I'm like, intimacy isn't sex, because sex addicts prove that, all day long, that they can have transactional sex. And so the intimacy is the safe space, the being vulnerable, being able to share in real and meaningful ways. That's, how things shift and change. So other questions, put them in the Q&A. Now's your chance to ask. So.
Yeah.
Normally we have lots of questions. Normally we run out of time.
I know, right? That's okay.
Quiet group.
It's all right. As I'm looking at your question, oh, we got one. The main issue, you said the main issue is the porn. The porn is definitely a contributing factor. That is like the wedge that's in between you, and we got to deal with that. But porn isn't actually the thing, but he doesn't understand that yet. There's something even much deeper, that he's been using the porn as a way of dealing with all of his wounds instead of learning how to be vulnerable with you. And so that's part of what we work on in recovery. That's part of what we do in the groups and in all the things, is what is this really about, and how do we help you stop the numbing by porn and then look at what's underneath it, because it's more than just the porn. It's more about, how do I be vulnerable and real and share my emotions and show up for you, and all the things that make a relationship super healthy.
So she adds, and we'll get to the other questions, I promise, but she adds in the Q&A, he says he found healing several years ago, but I recently discovered him playing adult games. He says he deleted everything, and what else can I do? I tell him what I need, but he keeps going back to the list of things he does. So,
it makes me sad as I'm hearing that. I've talked to a number of women whose husbands say something like that. Well, I've stopped this, or I've stopped that, and then they go back and they do it again. Part of that is recognizing, like, this addiction is a brain cycle thing, right? So they may have stopped it for a really long time and then they go back. That may happen even when they're in recovery. Part of that is learning how to, like, be open and honest and having a conversation about what's going on with that. But usually what happens is the opposite. I'm going to keep it a secret. I'm going to get defensive. I'm not going to tell you what's going on. And then you caught me. And then I'm going to get defensive. And then I'm going to make it all about you and say you're blowing it out of proportion. And instead of taking ownership, yes, and I can see that hurt you, and here's what I'm doing, and let me show you, all that kind of stuff. So all of that is shame-based behavior, like fear-based behavior, and it could be that they really don't want to do anything about it. So that's a hard kind of thing to take a look at. We often are recommending that the spouses go to the support groups that we have at Sex and Relationship Healing, number one, so you don't feel alone. We also recommend that you support yourself by finding a qualified therapist in your area who can maybe walk you through some of these things. Because at the end of the day, when these are hard decisions, at the end of the day, when they're like absolutely refusing to be honest with you, you have decisions to make about, okay, well, can I stay in a relationship that I don't trust my husband? And many people do, but that they have learned to accept that's their reality. And then some people have learned, no, I can't. And that, I don't know what that will be for you, but you don't have to do it alone, is my point. Like there are people on this planet who've been there with you and would love to put their virtual or their real arms around you and let you know that you are enough and that you matter and that you are worthy of love and belonging.
And that is also true. And the couple things I wanted to add is he says, and it's always actions. It's not what, lips are moving, because, obviously lying to himself and everyone else for years and decades. But the other thing is that, he's not creating safety. Absolutely shame-based. And I hear that, but what healthy boundaries do you need for you? Kind of going what, Troy was talking about, maybe it's a in-home therapeutic separation. Maybe he needs to leave. Dr. Rob talks all the time about, why would you have sex with somebody you don't trust? He's not showing you that he's trustworthy. Perhaps he starts with a work group, the Porn Addiction 101 work group, and that's part of your healthy boundaries. I need you to go learn about, porn. I love the idea of watching the videos together, and then you can have a discussion about it. So at some point is, what is he willing to do to step into the space? We have a work group, out of the doghouse for men who have been caught cheating, and yes, watching porn is cheating if it's not part of what you've agreed to. And Dr. Rob in the book wrote, do you have to do these things? No. But then don't be in the relationship, because in a relationship, this is what you need to do to heal the relationship. So it's a choice, and I really feel bad, because someone who just stops the behavior, that is the worst, hardest, most difficult place to be, is like just stopping. It's like hanging on with your fingernails, and it's addressing the symptom. It's like, okay, I'm abstinent, but you've got no recovery, you've got no skills, you're not living happy, joyous, and free. You're not living in integrity. It's just not doing the behavior, and and still being a jerk. And I'm sorry for you, I'm sorry for him too. He can learn, he can do things differently, higher level of help, and getting more help. So now we're going to go back to the first one. My essay husband and I watched 2 Monday night Q&As with Dr. Rob and me. Each time my essay husband goes into deep shame. We are 3 months out of D-Day, and he has no recovery. 32 years of erotic massage parlors, etc. And we had a conversation afterwards, and one of the results was my asking for no sex for a while, since I am so triggered recently with intrusive thoughts. His comment was that our sex is the only thing that gives him any spark in his life. Oh, manipulative. And that it is, if we were not together, he would still be acting out and no desire to change. How should I interpret this?
Right. Well, he is caught up in the impotent one has grabbed him by the nethers and helped him. He has bought into the belief that life without sex is impossible, which is one of the core beliefs that sex addicts have. Like that, I'm not going to be able to live my life if I don't have sex. Now, life without sex might not be fun. Life without sex might be not interesting, but it isn't impossible. Millions of people do it all the time. So he's bought into this core belief that he's afraid, and he has these stories that he's being told by shadows that this is the only way on the entire planet that he's going to have any joy in his life. Well, wow. Like, how much pressure does that put on you? Like, you are the source of his happiness. You are the source of his joy. And if you don't show up to do that, he's going to be a miserable person. Well, you do not have to take that. You don't have to hold that. That is, number one, it's not true. And number two, you're not responsible for his happiness. You're not responsible for his joy. He needs to figure out how to do that himself. I'm proud of you for saying that you need to not have sex for a while because the intrusive thoughts are so overwhelming that you don't feel safe. I am proud of you for saying that and having some boundaries around that, because you are worthy of that. You need to be able to feel safe in order to have a wonderful sexual experience. You need to feel safe in order to have a non-wonderful sexual experience, to be able to enjoy breakfast together or to enjoy going for a walk. Like, all of those things, you need to have safety around that. So you can simply say, I don't buy that. I don't believe that's true. I believe that that is you wanting to put all of that on me, and I'm not going to be responsible for that. I really hope that you can figure out and get some help for those kind of things. There's lots of free resources, and there's some low-cost resources that Tammy has that's pointed out, and there's therapists. There's lots of places for you to go, honey, to be able to figure this out. But I'm not going to have sex with you until I feel safe. And that's a boundary that I have got to put for me. And you may freak out about that. And I hope that you figure something out. But I don't feel safe. And it's my body and it's my choice.
Well said. And I read, that his spark is way more important than your pain. And so hold your boundary. And we have a treatment center. We work with guys like that. We help them have a foundation of recovery. We help them find joy and sparks in not just sex. And as I mentioned earlier, sex to a sex addict is not the same as recovery sex, where it's, connection and I care about you. It's about, well, I shouldn't be doing this, but anyway, it's about transaction. So it just like an alcoholic, I need a drink, and it's just looking to escape, and the dopamine and everything else. It isn't about what the drink is, and oh gosh, this drink is so tasty. It's about, I need the escape. So I'm honored that you hold your boundary about that, and keep letting him know that there's help. Him going to the shame place, like Troy said with an earlier one, that is not useful. I see you've gone to the shame place. That is not useful. We are stuck, if you continue to go to that place. So okay, next question. My husband is in good recovery from porn, but I still struggle with letting go of what he has done, what he has looked at. How could he do this? I struggle with thinking he did this for our entire 33 years of marriage and now he quit. But I am supposed to heal and be okay for whatever time we have left. It's just so hard. I'm in counseling. We're doing coaching. I go to groups, etc. Just afraid I will never be able to see him the same. That's true. I guess my question is, does this take a while? Yes. And are there some people that don't heal? I'm 2 years from D-Day. So
Thank you for your vulnerability and your honesty about that. The truth is, it does take a longer time for the spouses to recover than, and I love that you're getting help, because that will help you a lot faster. But the truth is, it does take the spouses a longer time to recover than the addict who's doing their work. And part of that is because the addict has known that they've had this for a really long time. And so in the back of their mind, they've known that this is something that they've not wanted, and they've been fighting it, and they've been working. So they've like had a heads up, I guess. So when they finally were ready to go to therapy and they were ready to do it, they had a running start. But usually for the spouses, this is brand new. They had no clue. This is like like betrayal, and this is like news to them. So they had no heads up. And so they are starting from ground zero and having to start from there. So it will take, I mean, it takes an addict's brain at least a year and sometimes 2 years of solid sobriety and ongoing recovery for lasting brain changes to have an effect. That is really the same when we're dealing with any kind of trauma. So you've said it's 2 years from D-Day. You're on your way. Your brain is recovering and it's starting to heal. However, you will never look at him the same. And in the work of Esther Perel and other therapists, as they have done research about affairs, at some point you have to bury that old relationship. You have to have a funeral for that old relationship. You have to have a funeral for that old husband that you had and say goodbye to him. Say goodbye to that old relationship and walk away from that and create a brand new one. That is incredibly hard to do. It's easier to say than it is to do, but that is part of the healing process. Because otherwise, what we do is we're driving down the freeway, looking in the rearview mirror, thinking, "Man, I really wish that I could have had what I thought I had back then, and why couldn't I have had back then?" And then I'm missing out on the beautiful adventure that I'm going to have today. Because if your husband really is in recovery and he's doing the things that he's doing, he's not the same man that he was. His heart is changing, his brain is changing. He's learning how to be more vulnerable and probably more real and open with you than he's probably ever been in his life. And so you get to discover the real husband, the one that you never knew that you married. And so it gives you and him an opportunity to actually create a new life together. Yes, the trust jar is not completely full. There will never be all the marbles at the top of the trust jar anymore, ever, ever, ever. That does not mean that you can't have a beautiful life, but it's figuring out, how do I move forward and stop looking at the past? How do I say goodbye to that? Really mourn it, cry, grieve, scream, yell, say goodbye, and then together hold hands and walk to the future and figure out what your new future is going to be, that the two of you transparently, without lies, without dishonesty, are going to create together.
Well said. And I know it's hard. I mean, it is hard. And you say, I'm supposed to heal. I want you to heal. I want you to have, otherwise his addiction holds you hostage forever, and the things he can't undo what he did. But what Troy said, you can move forward. What he's done, how could he do all that? Why? All of that stuff. How do you, from this moment forward, move forward? What can that look like? And I know many couples, who talk about, we are in a far more honest, connected, real relationship, eyes wide open, than we ever were before. That we have a couples healing from betrayal work group starting May 5th. I can't help but think that might be, good for the two of you. Grieving losses together is part of that. And it is just what Troy said. It's, how do we grieve the loss of what we thought we had, what we hoped for, and move forward in a different way. So I'd invite you to check that one out. So, okay, next question. My essay husband, only weeks into recovery after discovery, will listen to my pain and how I feel. I ask him how he feels about what I said, and he keeps saying, I'm sad. Is that shame? Lots of violent trauma in his life as a child.
Honestly, I don't think that's shame. I think he's actually being real with you, and he's saying, I'm sad. What he's lacking is what to do about it. So what I'm hearing is he doesn't like say, and I suck as a husband, and I'm horrible, and like I'm no good. Like, that's shame. Him just saying I'm sad is him being real. And so together, you're both sad. Like, you're sad, he's sad. So then that gives you an opportunity to say, okay, so what do I need in my sadness? And how can he help me? what does he need in his sadness, and how can I help him? One of the things that he needs in his sadness is ways to make it better. What can I do to help make the pain not as bad for you? And like, really, we have like this deer in the headlights look, like, I can see your pain. I don't know what to do about it. And so we freeze. So the fact that he's willing to be vulnerable and say, I'm sad, kudos to him. He needs a little bit. Yeah. So this is what would help, honey. And tell him what you need. The 5 love languages gives you kind of like an idea of some ideas of what you could ask for. Like, it doesn't really matter which your love language is, although that's helpful, but do you need words of affirmation in that moment? Do you need a hug, physical touch? Do you need him to just spend some time with you? Like, do you just need to go for a walk? Do you need help like washing the dishes? Like, would it be nice if he bought something for you? Like, those are the giving gifts, those 5 ways is like, out of those things right now, what's something that would help me feel a little better? Could I ask for that? Because I'm guessing he would want to, but he doesn't know what to do. So he just kind of stares at you and he says, I'm sad. So that's what my thoughts about that.
Well, and she adds, he is remembering traumatic abuse daily now and willing to talk to me about this. And that's interesting, but you aren't the right person to talk to about this. I mean, it gives you some framework for why, but if he is not working with a qualified professional, this is the stuff that, will cause him to relapse. And I don't hear that he's, you say he's in recovery. I'd say he's abstinent if it's only been a few weeks. He's not doing, but what is he doing? Is he daily going to a 12-step meeting? Is he joining the drop-in groups on sexandrelationshiphealing.com? Is he signed up for the sex addiction or porn addiction 101 work group? Is he getting a foundation? Because just uncovering all this stuff, it's a toxic stew. And, nobody knows how to deal with this stuff. Working with qualified professionals, you getting support for you in a pro-dependent lens, him having the support he needs to get a path of recovery and deal with that trauma. I mean, the trauma stuff is coming up, getting somebody to help process that, so that he, can continue to work on, on recovery. I would highly recommend. And if you don't have qualified professionals, email me, Tammy, TAMI, at seekingintegrity.com. Let me know where you're at, and I will work on helping you hopefully find a list of qualified professionals. So, okay. In the middle of the last affair, I had an emergency appendectomy. He met me at the ER. I was sick, went to ER, etc. Now, even though he was committed to this other woman, he fought to stay with me in the ER all the way to ICU, where he had to leave me. Security was standing there. I was sick. I was crying. He was saying he would find me tomorrow, but in my head, I couldn't figure out how he could find me in all the chaos in the middle of COVID. I don't remember when I went to the surgery, but when I woke up from my surgery, he was asleep by my bed. Somehow he found his way. This is the only reason I'm still here, even though he was meeting this woman 4 to 5 days a week. He put me first always. And when he didn't, I never knew it. At the same time, it almost hurts worse. How do I not look for the next shoe to drop?
So you're talking about the very common and very overwhelming experience of foreboding joy. That was a very scary experience, and he showed up and it felt so amazing and it was joyful, and yet there is this fear, like, oh my gosh, like, when the other shoe gonna drop? Like, you're looking over your sleeping babies and you're thinking, okay, like, is one of them gonna get hit by a car when they are 16 years old? Or like that's foreboding joy that we all have. And so, number one, recognizing that is a very common experience. Brene Brown in her research talks a lot about that, and just recognizing that there is nothing that you can do, like, you don't know what you don't know about the future. We practice being mindful in this moment. We're going to be in this moment, and I'm going to enjoy this moment. And we continue to have conversations with our partners about where we are, how are we doing, where's the trust level, what's going on with this other woman? Did you say goodbye? Did you end it? Are we going to go do some couples therapy? Are we going to work on recovery? What does that look like? And being able to ask some questions just like we would be if we were planning, if we knew that a drought was coming and we would be putting some food storage away, like we would be preparing for some stuff, but we'd still be learning how to be in this moment. So I'm glad you're okay, by the way. Then the feeling is normal, and you just ask a lot of questions, but also like in that express a lot of gratitude as well.
Well, and I know you're still there. He was meeting this woman. I'm assuming that has stopped. If it hasn't, then he shows up for you in the crisis, but he's not there on a daily basis. So I think there's a lot more to unpack with that, and hopefully you've got qualified help for you. Because it was almost like one of the earlier ones that was like, here's the list of all the things I've done for you. So, you should have sex with me. And it's like, look, I showed up for you in the emergency room, so you should stay with me. So like, what do you need out of this relationship for the totality of it? So, okay. Hi, thank you for this Zoom. It's always really helpful. My sex addict husband, married 12 years. I found out 11 years ago, only started being sober in the last 7 months. He always agrees to my boundaries eventually, but then there is no follow through. When do you know it's time to separate?
When you know that it's time to separate, you have a gut. Like I tell my clients, like they'll ask me that question. I don't know. I'm not you, but you will know. There will be a sense inside that will tell you that now is the time. And I've had clients who've had some horrible, horrible experiences. And I'm like, okay, so like all your friends and family are like, why are you still with this guy? And she'll say, because my heart says it is not time yet. And I say, honor your gut. The whole time you've been like manipulated, you've never honored that gut. Like you've been manipulated and gaslit and all that stuff. You've not. So trust your gut. And when your gut says that it's time, you will know it and trust that. So honor your gut and you will know.
Yeah, I my experience is that like people will have the head knowledge, like I know I need to separate. And until it gets to their heart, their gut, they can't. And then when that connection is made, they do. And then it's right for them. And I'm not saying that will happen for you. I want to go back to the boundaries. He agrees to my boundaries, but there's no follow through. A boundary isn't a boundary unless and they're not punitive. It's for your safety. This is what I need for my safety, and this is, so I need you to honor this. And if you don't, then we're going to do an in-house separation, or then I'm going to need you to move out, whatever it is for you, but and if it is, that's good. And that helps rebuild trust of like, this person is honoring the boundary. So, but a boundary, like I hear this all the time, is like, he doesn't pay any attention to my boundaries. They can only be boundaries, if they can't be trampled through. So, without consequence. So I would encourage you, like, if he's trampled through your boundaries, hasn't observed them, then what did you say were the consequences of not doing that for your safety, emotional, physical, financial, whatever it is. So I'm in a horrible cycle of pain from his lack of intimacy and sex. He's in recovery, but I'm triggered daily by the lack of emotional, physical connection. And he's anorexic and trying, saying he does desire me, but is afraid of me because I'm emotionally intense, angry, etc. D-Day round 2 discovered before the holidays on my own, while he continued to lie and postpone accountability, then shut down completely. This is so sad. What is the way past anorexia? Is it beyond lonely? And it's beyond lonely and frustrating for me. So
I'm very sad that you are lonely. And I appreciate, like, I hear the frustration, I hear the concern, I hear the worry about him, and I hear that you don't want to keep living like this forever. There is a way past anorexia for him, and that is him doing his work. And whatever that looks like for him, what resources are available in his area, using some of the resources that we have here, but him taking a look at uh, understanding that that's the other side of the same coin, like acting out intensely on one side of the coin, not acting out at all, shutting down completely is the other side of this same coin, which is all related to how the person feels inside in the ways that he's numbing his pain, and not dealing with his own wounds inside. So that's the way. Whether he does it or not is kind of up to him. And then going back to what we've been talking about with the last person, then you decide how much longer that is going to work for you or not.
So the next one is, my husband wants me to do work with him, read books, do exercises together for his ADHD. I'm reluctant to do this because he refuses to take medication that may help him improve. If he's not willing to help himself, I'm hesitant to invest a lot of time and energy to help him heal. He has a coach for 10 days or 2 weeks, but he needs more than just reading books, with me. I had to do a lot of work with him as a result of his sex addiction, and I'm not in a place where I trust him. I'm too exhausted and tired to take on another problem when he is not willing to help himself. How do I handle this? Any suggestions, advice on how to move forward? My boundary is no meds, no work together. Is this healthy? I'm gonna find the links. There's a podcast on ADHD and why it's critically important to take those meds. And there's a video too. I'm going to find that and put it in the chat. But there's Dr. So this is Dr. Troy, or this is Troy Love. Dr. Todd Love did the ADHD stuff. It's very complicated. But anyway, the life expectancy of a male with ADHD that isn't taking his meds is reduced by, I think it was 13 years. It was astounding. So I'm going to find that while Troy addresses the rest.
Okay, I'm also going to put a link. There is an adult study hall. There is a ADHDrewired.com has an adult study hall that he can sign up for. And they will have people who do that for him. So it doesn't have to be you. So I just put that in the link. I'm hearing that's really exhausting. I know what it's like to live with people who have ADHD. That can be really exhausting. So if that's a boundary for you, then you need to hold your boundary. Whether or not he chooses to take meds or not is him. But if that's a boundary for you, then you hold to your boundary and say, here's some other resources, but I'm not going to do that. I hear that that's important, but that's not what I'm going to do. So honor you, recognizing that is a thing that he's going to deal with for the rest of his life. And there are things that he can do to help that, but you don't want to be the tutor. That's not the job you want to play, and that's okay. There's other resources that can show up and probably would be better than you.
Yeah, and it's not just reading a book. I mean, it's like if we all could just read a book and we'd all be in recovery, and that's not how it works. So his actually connecting, like doing the drop-in groups on sex and relationship healing, his doing 12-step, that's, and then they can talk to him and, and help him learn. But yeah, I mean, books is still good too. But I put the podcast and the Super Saturday Recovery Summit, which you'll see Troy on too. He did one of those, but, check those out because it really is important. Meds, when indicated in the proper dose, time released, really do make a difference. But there isn't, somebody asked earlier about, there isn't a magic pill. Eddie Caparucci talked about there's no magic bullet, no magic pill, no magic wand, that this is going to, that this is all going to go away. It's like, we have to do the work, and we can, but for some, not everyone, some form of medication properly dosed, not from your GP, from somebody who actually gets this, can make a difference. So our marriage therapist wants to focus on things like my tone of voice, my traumatic reactions to the repeated disclosures and betrayals. Meanwhile, my husband is still lying, betraying, and gaslighting me. He is in therapy. I am in therapy. We do Bloom and Path groups respectively. We're 2 years past D-Day, the first one. And I feel like he is never going to change. We have a young daughter together. He says he has quit he says he has quit porn and masturbation, but he is isolating, and finally admitted he is still objectifying women and fantasizing about a life with another woman. Should I really take this long for him to show change? When do I say enough and protect my daughter and myself? He says he wants to be here, but his actions and behaviors prove otherwise.
So should it take this long? It can take the rest of his life. Recovery is a lifelong endeavor. We're always working on becoming better humans. So all of us, it's a lifelong endeavor, and all of us make mistakes, and all of us change. So that is going to take a long time. However, you should be able to see some improvements sooner than later, right? But some things may take a lot longer, and it really kind of takes a look at the person's motivation, how willing they are to do the work necessary, wherever the thing is that they're wanting to work on. All of us, regardless of what it is that we're working on, if we don't have the motivation, we're not going to do it. So your other question is, when do you say enough and protect your daughter and yourself? That is a question that you probably need to look at the mirror and ask yourself. It sounds like both of you are doing some work. You're doing the path groups, you're finding support, you're going to therapy, all of those things. You still are catching your husband in lies. He's still gaslighting you and betraying you. So that tells me that there is not a lot of safety in the relationship. So because of the lying and the betraying and all of that stuff, there is not the safety. So of course, your tone of voice is going to be a little more intense. Of course that is because you don't feel safe. When we're safe, things are calm and relaxed, and I can be open and I can share my feelings, and I'm not afraid that you're going to freak out. So what I'm hearing is that there's still, you probably have made a ton of progress, but there still is not enough safety pumped in that relationship yet. And that would be the focus, is how can, I don't feel safe yet, and this is what I need to feel safe. That's where the boundaries come in. And honey, are you willing to help me feel safer? What are you going to do to help me feel safer? Because this is what I need and I don't feel safe.
And this so frustrates me because, and I don't know if this is a qualified therapist, if it's just a marriage therapist, most of them don't understand addiction. And so we don't even recommend it until somebody is able to show up. Somebody used the analogy, going to marriage therapy for the two of you is like rowing a boat with one oar. You're paddling like crazy, and the other person is still lying and manipulating and doing all this. So you're going around in circles, and you're getting upset and angry and frustrated, and it's not helping. So to me, what I read is, what he's doing isn't enough, and so he says he wants to be there and all that. Dr. Rob said it on the Monday night webinar again, the biggest fear of an addict is that you're actually going to leave. So you holding that safe boundary of like, I can't keep doing this. It isn't okay for our child. And, I was talking to somebody last night and said, at some point it's like, do you want your daughter to be someone who is objectified? Does he want that for her? Like if that is, because everybody he's objectifying is somebody's daughter. So sometimes that can help, go, okay, I really do need to get help. But I know lots of people that go to therapists and keep lying for years and years. And it's unfortunate because it's a waste when there's help right there that really can be meaningful. And we don't have to keep living in the lies and the lack of integrity. So I hope for you that you protect you and your daughter. And I hope he finally gets it so that, that you guys can be a family. And regardless if you leave or he leaves, you will always co-parent. You will eventually co-grandparent. So him being the man of integrity and being able to show up, is meaningful regardless of whether you stay together. So last question, I know we're late, but we're going to finish this one. Discovering what a man we thought is not who he pretended to be for 45 years and hid all the attachment wounds. After 6 years of trying, I'm going through a divorce because I cannot stay in, because he cannot stay in recovery, checking boxes, antisocial personality disorder. My adult sons also feel all these wounds in therapy, realizing how much their dad's addictive behaviors affected them since childhood. Do I say not as I, or do as I say, not as I do? The mama bear in me is reactive, discovered recently what he did and said to them when we were or when they were young, out of morals and integrity. We are paying the price now. My shame is I should have protected them, saw the red flags, even though I didn't know my ex's secret life. My ex continues to lie and manipulate. I know I have no control, yet my heart wants to go into protection mode. My attachment wounds have been hit hard in the divorce. They realize from being in therapy, they are adult children in SA and alcoholic. How do I support them, honor their feelings while in my shame and wounds?
Oh, my heart hurts with you and
Yeah.
I'll say more, but to answer the question at the very last, how do you support them? By doing your work. By you becoming the healthiest mom, grandma that you can be. That's how you support them. So that when they come and they cry and they tell you all the hard things, your shame, your judge doesn't hijack that. Your martyr doesn't show up and hijack that. You can just say, yes, honey, that was so hard. And I remember that was so hard. And what do you need right now? I love you. I'm so proud of the man that you've become. And look at all the things that you've done with your life. And I hear that was hard, and you're able to hold space. So you do that by being able to learn how to become shame resilient. And some of that is through the work that I've talked about with like talking to those shame shadows. Another thing that you might want to like do maybe and have your therapist walk you through this is imagining that you today travel back in time and you sit on the couch with your younger, newly married or been married for 5 years self. And you hear her, you see her, you imagine walking around the house and looking at all the pictures on the wall and stuff and recognizing she has no clue what was going on there. And just kind of looking at, she really didn't know. So am I going to judge her? Am I going to let my judge kind of come with me on this little field trip and beat the crap out of her? Am I going to look at her and say, wow, you did a pretty dang good job, girl. Like, look at that. And then what would you say to her? What kind of compassionate things would you say to her? And then can you write those down and then say them to yourself? Can you practice self-compassion? Truly, the antidote to shame is compassion and empathy. To be able to be kind and loving and compassionate, that is how we blow shame out of the water. And so instead of the judge just beating the crap out of us and telling us we should have known, and I can't believe you didn't see it, and look at how you didn't protect your sons, it's like, judge, I hear you and I thank you for like, you're trying to show up and kind of trying to protect me from like all the pain that I'm feeling, but I got it. And I'm gonna look in the mirror and I'm gonna say to myself, I didn't know. And had I known, I probably would have done something different. But I know today, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing this, and this is how I'm showing up for my sons, and this is how I'm enough, and this is how I remember that I matter. And I am worthy of love and belonging, and all those kind of things that you can say. And honestly, as you do that, the judge starts to like back away and goes back into the shadows because the judge is like, okay, you got it taken care of. And then you do it again the next day and the judge shows up again, and over and over and over until pretty soon you've learned that the moment the judge like steps into the light, you're like, see you. And they're like, okay. And then you're like, I'm okay. And it that's what shame resilience looks like. and doing it, even just practicing it every day for a couple of weeks, you get better, you get stronger, and then you're able to say, no, I'm okay. And then when you're there, you teach your sons how to do that.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. You model shame resiliency for yourself and for your sons. And, hit your addict husband, ex-husband, the gaslighting, manipulate, that is typical addict. But, you and your sons, don't deserve to take on any of the blame for that. You loved somebody that was manipulative and lying and self-serving. But I bet the gratitude of your sons for you is great. And I invite you to lean into those good relationships for all of you. So, okay. Another great time with everyone. Thank you so much. Thanks, Troy. We need to talk about scheduling another one, so I'll be in touch. But thank you, everyone. Next week, Mary Franz will be back with the trust solution. So check that out. And the resources, both the free on sexandrelationshiphealing.com and the work groups and our expert treatment program, on seekingintegrity.com. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.